Good morning and welcome to CGTN's special coverage of the new CPC leadership. I'm Zhou in Beijing. The 19th CPC National Congress concluded yesterday. Over 2,200 party members elected the 19th CPC Central Committee, which will hold its first plenum today. One of the main priorities is to elect a new Politburo Standing Committee. And members of the new committee will meet the press later today. And we have reporters from all over the world to cover this. But first, let's go to our reporters Han Peng and Sony Matu, who are outside the Great Hall of the People, ready to give us a review of the party congress. Han Peng and also Sony there. We know that one of the founding principles of the Chinese politics is what we call democratic centralism. But what exactly is that institution, and how does it guarantee democracy and efficiency in decision making?
Well, right, Zoe, before I start, let me introduce my colleague Sonny, who has come all the way from Nairobi to come here to cover this big event of the Party Congress.
Thank you.
And today, the biggest event would be, of course, the leadership change, and we're all expecting the unveiling of who will coming out in just about an hour as the members of the political bureau of the Communist Party.
From what I understand, and in the past, looking back, we've seen that the members of the political bureau have always been an odd number. This is, they say, to maintain democratic centralism, a term that I'm still trying to understand, Han.
Well, of course, that democratic centralism is a word that is not quite familiar for many foreign audience, but it's very important in the decision-making of the Communist Party because the odd number ensures the voting. And also, the democratic centralism is actually a combination between democracy and decentralism. So it means that before a decision is made, there is always this fierce debate or sometimes open discussion and sometimes even very sharp questioning about the different opinions among each other. But once it's been decided, either through voting or through the collective decision, no one should continue to voice their differences, and it's all about implementation. This ensures the efficiency of many of the decision makers.
Yes, indeed. I heard about the maglev train versus the high-speed train. This was a debate that went on for years, but eventually, once it was agreed upon, the high-speed rail was constructed in a short time, just like that.
Yes, actually in just a few years, China now has the world's longest high-speed railway system, and it's longer than the rest of the world combined. And not only that, China has many other infrastructure construction projects that are being implemented really fast, and many of them are being exported abroad, including the countries along the Belt and Road, and also many countries in Africa.
Yes,
right?
indeed. We have seen the standard gauge railway in Kenya is nearly completed now. It's been completed really fast. It's standard. It's come with a lot of development along the way. We have seen small towns coming up, thousands of jobs created. But it's not just the rail. They're also building highways in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in some parts in the north of Africa. We're also seeing that they are being involved in dams as well. And it's infrastructure in general, transport. This is key for development, not just for developing countries, but even for China.
Yes, actually China has this old saying that to build a road, in order to get rid of poverty, you must build a road first. And also this efficiency is actually behind the efficiency implementation, is behind the reasons of the economic miracle here in China over the past 40 years. And now China is trying to implement some of that across the other countries in order to make sure that the world can share the fruit of China's fast rise. Back to Zoe.
That's the Chinese style of governance. Thank you so much, Han Peng and Sonny. Well, the 19th National Congress of the CPC has concluded, as we mentioned, and our own Zhou Yun reports on the decisions taken at the closing session yesterday and the highlights over the past week.
同意的代表请举手。
A final approval to a new CPC Central Committee and a new Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. Delegates to the Congress also passed resolutions on the report of the 18th CPC Central Committee, the work report of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, and an amendment to the CPC Constitution.
中国共产党第19次全国代表大会
The agenda of the 19th CPC National Congress is completed today. The report of the 18th Central Committee, approved by the Congress, established the goal of deciding to build a moderately prosperous society in an all-round way and open a new journey of building a modern socialist country.
新征程的目标。
Delivering a report at last week's opening session, General Secretary Xi Jinping outlined a two-step approach to build China into a great modern socialist country after the completion of building a moderately prosperous society by 2020. He also said that China is at a critical moment in history as socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era.
This is our strategic vision for developing socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era. Finish building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. Proceed to achieving modernization, and then move on to turn China into a great modern socialist country in every dimension.
This Congress reflects greater openness, transparency, and China's increasing confidence. Many delegations to the Congress held open discussions, giving domestic and foreign media a chance to hear about the reforms of the last 5 years and the future implementations based on Xi Jinping's report.
To build a new low-carbon and clean energy system, we plan to invest 1.5 trillion yuan over the next 5 years to further develop a high-voltage electricity network. We will continue to expand the scale of electricity transportation from west to east and advance renewable energy bases in western parts of the country. We strive to play a leading role in the electric industry.
On the sidelines of the National Congress, 6 news conferences and 8 group interviews were held, covering almost every aspect of China's development, from politics to the economy and social affairs to the military. At those events, not only were questions taken from both Chinese and foreign media, but achievements were also introduced and serious commitments made.
Emissions from fossil fuel vehicles have been effectively reduced. Meanwhile, we are carrying out environmental prevention programs in rural areas. We have finished this work in over 100,000 villages, and nearly 200 million rural citizens are benefiting from this. Major ecological protection and restoration work is also carrying on smoothly.
Moreover, for the very first time in history, a delegate corridor allowed delegates from various industries and sectors to take questions from the media before entering the official venue. And this has improved interaction between the delegates and media and helped to diversify coverage of the event. The members of the Standing Committee of the new CPC Central Committee's Political Bureau are expected to meet the Chinese and foreign journalists on Wednesday morning. China has made tremendous progress since the last Party Congress in 2012, emerging to the world's second-largest economy and becoming one of the key players in international affairs. And now the 19th National Congress of the CPC has rolled out a fresh set of guidelines to target even more development in the next 5 years and to lead the country into a new era of hope and prosperity. Zhou Yun, CGTN, reporting from the Great Hall of the People, Beijing.
And now let's go live to our reporter Zhou Yun, who is now standing by inside the Great Hall of the People. Zhou Yun, good morning. The new leadership will soon meet the press. What is the mood in there, and how people are anticipating to see the new lineup of leadership?
Good morning there, Zoya. Well, in about an hour or so, the world's attention will be gathered here in this room, and that is because members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau will meet the press here in about an hour. So this is a historic moment, and as you can see, the East Hall, which is the venue for the meeting, is now fully packed with about 500 to 600 reporters from home and abroad, and over half of them are actually international media. And this is actually the exact same room where, the members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau from the 18th National Congress of CPC meet the press. And it actually has become a tradition in the recent decades for those new leaders to meet the press after the Congress. And what usually occurs is that, the secretary will address media and introduce the new colleagues to the media. And since this is the same room, the same venue as the last Congress, so let's take a look here at the surroundings of this room. For instance, the scene painting will be the same painting features the backdrop for the group photo of the new leaders. And what comprised the most part of this painting is the mountains. And it's the marvelous landscape of China. It is the strong national soul that has been conveying, expressing, and also inspiring passion from the new era. And because the majority of this painting comprise mountains, and that remind me of a quotation, I think that can help to explain that why today the political event is particularly important. It is actually from a late Chinese leader, Deng Xiaoping, and he once said that the crucial thing for China is for the Communist Party to have a good political bureau, particularly a good standing committee of the political bureau. As long as no problems arise from those two bodies, the stability of China will just be as same as mountain high. I think this quotation helped to explain that why today it is so important, not only to China, but also because the intertwined interest with China, the rest of the world, is getting the world's attention. So today, Zoya, we're not only expecting, those new changes. I think we're also expecting something that remain unchanged, which is the continuity and consistency of the policy despite this leadership transition. And this is actually the beauty of Chinese political system. In the change of political transition. For instance, we've been witnessing this for a lot of years. For instance, China's strong stance on opening up to the outside world, and also China's continuous efforts improving the livelihood. More importantly, the very powerful measures on anti-corruption and the serious commitment on environmental protection. The list goes on. So that's the beauty of the political system. And despite the transition of the leadership, there are some valuable stuff that we do not change to remain the same. So today we'll be witnessing many changes, the new faces, the new era, but there will be something more valuable that remain unchanged. Well, we're just as same valuable, which is, the past of the socialism with Chinese characteristics, and more important than what I just mentioned, the continuity, the consistency of the policy. And for the past decades, the Chinese CPC has led the Chinese people with the beauty of those political systems, has guided them to go through the worst of the times. And with this, we're now waiting for the best of times. Back to you in the studio.
And what is the plan, Zoe, this morning? We don't know who will there be and how many of them, but is they're going to answer questions or they will give speeches to the press?
Sorry, there might be some technical problems, so I get back to you in the studio. So.
All right. It seems we lost the audio with Zhou Yun. Thank you very much, Zhou Yun. We'll try to get back to her if it is possible. And now let's take a look at the structure and the organization of the CPC.
The CPC National Congress and its elected Central Committee are the party's highest leading bodies. Over 2,000 party delegates from across the country convene every 5 years in Beijing to take part in the National Congress. The CPC's core leadership, the Central Committee, is elected at the close of each National Congress. The Central Committee is comprised of over 300 elected members, a General Secretary, a Political Bureau, and a smaller Standing Committee. One thing worth noting is that the General Secretary of the Central Committee must first be a member of the Standing Committee. The Central Committee also selects the members of the Central Military Commission. At the close of each Congress, an administrative body called the Secretariat of the CPC Central Committee takes over responsibility for the party's daily affairs. The National Congress also selects the members of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, which is in charge of rooting out corruption and malfeasance inside the party.
And that's the structure of the CPC. And over the past years, one of the highlights of this year's National Party Congress is the amendment to the party constitution. The conference has basically enshrined Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era as the supreme guiding principle. New era refers new phase of development, marks a sharp difference from the past. And the CPC says the Constitution conforms to the needs of theoretical innovation, the practice, and development. And our own Han Bin talked to a professor from the party school who has been following the changes of the party charter and the reasons behind them.
The new generation of the world's largest political party. These new members will be the ones to carry on communism in China's new era. Professor Shen Chuanliang from the Central Party School has been studying the party history for some 2 decades. His focus is the new stage.
To put the party's latest thoughts on governance into the charter is to consolidate consensus. To put the breakthrough theoretical achievements and the practical experience into the charter will help promote the whole country's development in the new era with the new tasks.
Shen Chuanliang says putting Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era into the party constitution shows the significance of its core position and historic role. This new thought carries a vast spectrum of meanings. It makes clear the party's overarching goal, strategy, and policies for rejuvenation to make a strong, modern country by the middle of the century. These include the change of the principal contradiction, fostering confidence in the path, law-based governance, building a strong military, and new types of international relations. Certain principles are mandatory, like the party's leadership in a work, a people-centered approach, deepening reforms, and a new vision for growth.
This amendment is based on the party's previous thoughts to provide new ideas and solutions in dealing with new challenges and contradictions of society, which enters into the new era.
Professor Shen says revision is a CPC tradition in advancing with the times. Nearly every party congress has amended the charter, and once the new theoretical thoughts are enshrined, they could lead the country in an irreversible direction.
The CPC Charter is a small book, but it contains all the important thoughts and principles leading the world's biggest party. Each leadership has left its input, and today the thought of Xi Jinping has been written in, and its implementation means a new chapter for the party, the country, and the people. Han Bin, CGTN, Beijing.
So for more on China's CPC leadership and how they are elected, how they will rule China in the new era. Joining me here in the studio are Mr. Xu Sitao, Chief Economist at Deloitte China, and also Mr. Martin Jacques, co-founder of the Demos think tank. Let me start with you, Sitao.
Thank you.
Today is an important day for the CPC leadership because the Standing Committee members and the Politburo members will be elected. What do you care about this election?
Well, you care about this election because we want to see not just policy continuity, we also want to see changes. As what your colleagues said earlier, it's very important to deepen the reform, and it's very important to have a new type relationship with other countries, particularly major countries. And this is the composition of the leadership will shed light on some of these policies. That's why this is being closely watched.
What is your take, Martin?
Well, what's exceptional as well about this Congress is how much of a turnover there's going to be at the Central Committee level, at the Politburo, and at the Standing Committee. And I think that's very appropriate, actually, given the way in which clearly a new paradigm is emerging, the new era of the possibilities for China and its place in the world.
As you said, the turnover rate is pretty high. 70% of the members of this Central Committee has been new additions. What kind of new thoughts and philosophies and new momentums will bring to the CPC's leadership?
Well, I think that with any, I mean, a change of that size is clearly, essentially, a generational change as well. So the people who will be coming onto the Central Committee and working their way up through the various committees over time are going to bring new experiences, different backgrounds to those of their elders. So, you know, it inevitably provides a kind of a renewal effect, a refurbishment effect, a new sense of energy, a new sense of perspective, different kind of assumptions, and that's very important to an organization like the Chinese Communist Party.
And a lot of people are asking whether these people are the best and brightest of this country. Well, they were elected out of a body of 89 million people, that is the party members of the CPC. What do you make of the process of the selection of the party cadres in China?
Well, I think the process is ongoing, but from outsiders' perspective, there are a few metrics. For example, I think your political stance, that's important. I think work experience, that's very important. I think the performance, that's very important. As a chart on your TV screen showed earlier, there's actually another organization party called inspection. So party members have to be scrutinized and for their conduct. So you put all this matrix together, so that's actually producing, the 300 people and eventually the top 7 or top 9 people.
How do you look at the Chinese system of electing a party cadre from grassroots to the top rung of power? Is it efficient? Is it transparent? Is it working well?
Well, I think that starting from the end, your last point, it's clearly working well. I mean, this is a governance system which, when it comes to delivery, has been extraordinarily successful. I mean, the most successful governance system in the world in terms of delivery.
So the performance size is great.
It's terrific, absolutely terrific. I mean, compared with the West, it's really been far superior in terms of delivery. Now, you can argue, well, part of the reason is the differences, the West is advanced, China's been advancing, as it were, and so on. When it comes to the governance debate, of course, it's a lot of it, from a Western angle, has been about the notion of democracy, universal suffrage, multi-party systems, and so on. And I think, actually, I mean, at first, I think the reaction of the West is, oh no, this is completely illegitimate. But I think that you can feel a shift taking place in the argument from a Western point of view, in that it's now come to the point where, because of China's transformation, there's a growing respect, initially grudging respect, but I think a growing respect for what the Chinese governance system has achieved. And I think the question then will come, well, what, and already is in a slight way, well, what can we learn from this? Now, I don't mean that the Western system is going to become like the Chinese system, because...
Or we like them.
No, exactly. Because the governance systems, well, they're a product actually of the culture, the political culture. And the political culture is so different in China from the West.
And what is at the core of the system, what we call democratic centralism? In the eyes of many critics in the West, that's an oxymoron in itself. Because whether it's democracy, whether it's centralism.
Yeah, just to continue the earlier discussion, I think there is a key word of performance. And I also think it may not be a good idea just to compare China with the West. And perhaps it's important to compare China with many developing countries, because if you adopt the Western model...
You mean political system?
A political system. So many developing countries may not be able to get started to begin with. So I think that's the reason Martin alluded, the China's growth model has gained appeals over time. Now, coming back to your question, whether this is oxymoron or not, I think Chinese culture believes in Chinese culture decisions ought to be made by those who are more informed. So it's just different type of system. I mean, it's not I wouldn't say it's a oxymoron. It's just that's in Chinese culture.
So
and very deep.
You believe in some kind of meritocracy, the elite ruling China?
Well, I wouldn't say elite, but I think China is so vast, so diversified, and we simply do not have the building blocks which are being taken for granted in many Western societies and pretty open societies. So I think we have to be very pragmatic. So decisions really have to be made on informed
basis. But I
basis.
believe every political system is evolving and will evolve.
Yeah.
What's going to be Chinese political system development in the future?
Well, I think generally, I think it's proved its worth over the last few decades, and it's come a long way, and it's changed a lot during that period. It's become much more institutionalized, It's become much more accountable. It's more transparent than it used to be. It's now faced all kind of tests, not least the test of cyberspace. It's got to be responsive to all of that. And I think in the future, I think this process will continue. I mean, one of the things I noticed about the Congress, and I'm not a regular visitor to Congresses in China, but you know, the much bigger role for the media, both national and international, at this Congress. I mean, once upon a time, you didn't even know where the Congress was taking place.
Because the party itself is more confident.
Yes, it's more confident, and it feels the need and has the desire to reach out to the population, and not just the population now, the Chinese population, but to the world. You know, I mean, basically, the Communist Party Congresses here were, you know, got very little coverage, and people had not a clue about them in the West.
Very limited access before.
Yeah, but now you see, I think that there's a growing recognition, and this is very interesting change, a growing recognition around the world, in the developing world and the developed world, of the centrality and importance of the Chinese Communist Party Congress, not just to China, but to the world. And this is the shift that's taking place in the perception of China, both the self-perception of China and the perception of China outside, which is that previously what happened in China was essentially for China. Now it's not, it's for the world.
Indeed. Well, China is indeed reaching to the rest of the world. And one ambitious project, especially a good example, is the Belt and Road Initiative. It has achieved major accomplishments over the past 4 years. 69 countries and international organizations have signed up to the upcoming Belt and Road projects. Many CPC delegates credit China's state-owned enterprises with helping to secure the success of the initiative. Han Peng has more.
When the idea was first raised to revive the ancient Silk Road back in 2013, many questioned if the plan was too ambitious. But 4 years later, the question has become, how did it happen so fast?
It's mainly because of state-owned enterprises under the leadership of the Communist Party.
CPC delegate Li Dawei is a general manager at Baling Petrochemical Corporation, a major branch of China's leading oil company, Sinopec. His company recently secured several major trade deals with a number of Italian partners to export some of the best rubber products in the world.
We compete on the global market and work with private Western companies. We win deals because we offer high-quality, low-cost, smart strategies.
But Li says it's a completely different story when you look inside his company.
State-owned enterprises don't just work for profit. Under CPC leadership, sometimes we're obliged to sacrifice short-term profit to achieve a bigger national goal.
Delegate Ke Xiaobin works as a frontline technician for China's high-speed railway company, another giant state-owned enterprise.
For 14 years, I worked on one small part of the bullet train signal system to guarantee a safe and smooth ride.
Ke has never traveled abroad, but her products have been sold across the globe in dozens of nations with high-speed rail, including developing countries often ignored by Western firms.
Some developing countries have unpredictable markets where returns on investment can be guaranteed. But for us, we are happy to improve the lives of ordinary people there.
As China's saying goes, to end poverty, build a road. Xi Jinping's plan to revive the Silk Road is largely centered around infrastructure with an aim to complete what he calls an economic corridor linking the Pacific Ocean with the Baltic Sea. The Belt and Road Initiative will connect landlocked countries long marginalized from global maritime trade.
If we can help complete that corridor, we will be able to share the fruits of development, and that will be much more rewarding for us than just completing commercial contracts and earning money from our clients.
Every 5 years, the Communist Party delegates gather here in the Great Hall of the People to decide leadership change and policy adjustments. But unlike in Western countries, where the winning political party always has a tendency to abandon some of the legacies of the last administration, the Chinese Communist Party has years or even decades of consistency in those policies that have proven successful. Han Peng, CGTN, Beijing.
And how was that? Join me in the studio is Ms. Ke Xiaobin, a CPC delegate of the China Railway Signal and Communication Cooperation. I gotta ask questions in Chinese. 非常感谢你，小兵。
Thank you for being with us.
我们的讨论啊。
To participate in our discussion. First of all, would you please briefly introduce yourself and how you selected as the party delegate?
The selection of the delegates is a very strict process. It has due process. So starting with the grassroots nomination process, and then with ratification of secondary and third and tertiary process, and then the final delegates were determined by the Central Committee of our company, of our corporation. That's how we determine the delegates. And also at the city level.
感觉到压力吗？这是一个
How you
非
feel
常
the
具有竞
pressure
争性的
because this
过
is a
程。
very competitive process, right?
It is a very competitive process, but I feel great honored to be representing the grassroots workers, and I also have a great team, outstanding team backing me up. So I myself is very lucky to be part of the 19th Party
Please help us
Congress.
to understand your job
信号和交和通讯
in
公司。它这
a
个公司
signal and
主要的工
communication
作是什么？
cooperation
民
in
所的
real
工作
ways. What is your job?
The China Railway Signal and Communication Corporation is mainly in charge of the production and research of the signal system for the track system. Our corporation produced control equipment that has passed Europe standard and thus gain an access to the world market.
Which means Chinese railways running in China, but the signal and the communication actually produced by you, right? So the security of high-speed railway rely on you.
And our product has its independent property rights and is playing a leading role in the world.
By attending the 19th CPC National Congress discuss the amendment of party constitution, and you participate the whole process and also select the new members.
It is my first time to be part of this
看到这个过程
So you've been in
Congress.
the whole
独特的
process.
感受，跟我们分享一下。
Can you share with us your experience?
To be a delegate of this Congress, you have to go through a very strict selection process, which has shown that the Central Committee is very concerned with the selection of this process. I also need to listen to the suggestion and advice at the grassroots and bring these opinions to the highest level.
So it's a quite a fair discussion.
Yes, of course. In the amendment, in participating in amendment of the constitution, party constitution, my colleagues proposed that we need to improve the managerial expertise at the SOE, and this item has been reflected in the new party constitution.
您是来自国有企业啊，
So
中国
you
现在
come
目前一
from
个
the
非常
state-owned
重大的
enterprise,
挑
right?
战，就是
Right now we're facing a
改革国有
big
企业
challenges
运作。
to reform the
您作为一个
state-owned
国企的
enterprise.
党代表，
So as
您怎么看
party
待国企
delegates
改造？
from the SOEs, how you view
怎么让
the
国企
reform to
更加有
SOE and
效
how
率
make SOE increase their
提高它
efficiency,
的劳动生产力。
increase the productivity?
Personally, at the grassroots, we can all see that General Secretary Xi Jinping mentioned that innovation is the first priority in terms of improving production. So as grassroots workers, we need to raise the awareness for quality and technical level, as pointed by General Secretary Xi in his report, to enhance the craftsmanship and workmanship.
19大提出了
So
新的
for the 19th
战略
National Congress
设想
is initiated
也会选
new
出新的中央领导集
concept
体。
and ideas, and will also select the new leadership. What's your expectation for the China's development in the future, especially your industry?
First of all, the convening of the 19th Congress has made series of proposals and outlook for the future, which pointed out that we have a very bright future and also building a beautiful China as proposed in a report. I believe that in the next 30 years, especially in the realizing of the two centennial targets, we are ever more hopeful, and it also gives us more challenges and opportunities to give the country all that we have and contribute more to the country's development and serve as an honorable member of the party and also be part of the Belt and Road Initiative and help with the strengthening and deepening of the reform of SOE in our industry, in the building of railways at home and abroad, such as in Kenya. Our corporation participated actively in all of these constructions. I believe that our corporation will contribute more to the world.
Thank you very much. 34 years old party delegate.
希望您在未来的事业中大展
Hope you
拳
have a
脚。
bright future.
Thank you.
That's a 34-year-old member of the Party Congress. And the Party Congress has been one of the top stories this week in many international news outlets. For more, let's go to our correspondent Roe Rottenberg, who's now in Washington, D.C. Roe, how is this week's CPC National Congress being reported in the U.S.?
Well, you know, in the U.S. in general, international news doesn't get a lot of play with the general audience. And now in the U.S., there's really a lot of focus on the Donald Trump administration and what we're seeing day after day, different stories developing here. So that's taken a lot of attention away from the U.S. media. Still, there's always a pocket of international news, and China, of course, did make headlines this week. One prominent policy commentator, I just want to share a tweet that he wrote. He said, the biggest story in the world today is in China, not in the U.S., and he added, that's becoming more so the case day by day, which is a very interesting point to make, that the focus is shifting towards China. And a lot of people watching this, watching what is seen to be China's global ascent, and in the U.S. at least comparing that to what many feel might be the U.S.'s global descent under Donald Trump. I just want to share some headlines of how this was viewed. One magazine here, Time magazine, the headline saying, Xi Jinping becomes China's most powerful leader since Mao. Another newspaper, The Guardian, a British newspaper, but widely read by the international American audience, had word for word the exact same headline, the most powerful leader since Mao. That is their comparison. The New York Times just a few hours ago saying that China has elevated Xi Jinping to Mao-like status. So the focus there really on this new role, or this emerging role, a centralized role, a stronger role for the General Secretary, for the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and how that's being seen. A lot of curiosity in the U.S. about China changing, what Xi Jinping called bringing China into a new era, and really what that might mean, not just for China, not just for its growth around the world, but what that means in terms of America's global presence.
And this party Congress comes before U.S. President Donald Trump's trip to China just next month. How does this set the tone for the president's first meeting in China?
Well, absolutely, a few things. So first of all, I think the American administration is closely watching this, and as you know, it's not entirely over. They're waiting to see the new leadership. They're waiting to see who's part of the standing committee, if there will be a clear possible successor for Xi Jinping in 5 years, or if there would be the suggestion that he indeed plans to stay beyond a decade. We still don't know that, and neither do they. So that'll formulate what they will likely feel as Donald Trump heads to China, and also how he sees Xi Jinping presenting himself. Remember, previous Chinese leaders often presented a much more humbled version of themselves and of the Communist Party and, of course, of the People's Republic of China. Xi Jinping emerging slightly different, more confident about China's successes and its global role and its global expansion. Donald Trump very respectful of strong leaders. They've had that past interaction in Mar-a-Lago earlier this year, but this will be Donald Trump's a chance to be on Xi Jinping's turf and really allow Xi Jinping to set the tone for that meeting. And I think also the American administration curious about what Xi Jinping meant when he talked about strengthening China's military and its larger military role. I think in general the U.S. has been accepting of China perhaps exerting its position or showing its strength in areas that are of natural Chinese interest in the region, and the U.S. being accepting of that. But they'll be curious to see what happens if China expands its role in areas that the U.S. considers its own strategic backyard. We obviously saw China opening a foreign base in Djibouti. These are the types of things that make the American administration curious. They're likely going to be asking for clarification from the Chinese when Donald Trump goes to Beijing. That is something, for example, that before this type of speech was delivered by Xi Jinping may not have so clearly been on the agenda.
Indeed, a lot of interesting development to look forward to. Thank you so much, Rory, for your reporting from D.C. And more discussions about the 19th National Congress of the CPC. Earlier, we talked to Gary Locke, former U.S. ambassador to China. He said that it is both a big moment for China and an influential event for the global community.
Well, obviously, it's a very momentous time in China's history as it's moving into new phases of development and also its international efforts. Its One Belt, One Road initiative. And given what's happening in the world today, certainly China and President Xi Jinping will play a more pivotal, more dominant role in world affairs. Well, certainly there's a growing mood of nationalism, not just in the United States, but in many countries around the world, and you're seeing that in Europe. Kind of an inward focus. But I think it's a mistake because so many of the issues facing the world cannot be solved by individual countries, but only through collaboration and partnership with many others. And certainly between the United States and China, that relationship is perhaps the most important two-country relationship in the world today. And so many of the issues facing the world cannot be solved by either China alone or clearly not the United States alone, but the world is looking for leadership and collaboration by these two very important countries, whether it's on climate change, halting the spread of nuclear weapons, fighting global terrorism, curing diseases. The world needs that leadership and that joint effort of the United States and China.
And now let's go live to Bill Jones for more on China's major political event. And Mr. Jones is the Washington Bureau Chief of the Executive Intelligence Review. So Mr. Jones, people in the West, do they care about China's CPC Congress, and what do they care about?
Well, I think that this Congress this year has attracted more attention than any other Congress in the world. You can't read about it in the New York Times or the Washington Post because they simply write their articles from templates before events have happened. They know what they're going to say. But because there is an extended media, Chinese English language media is watched very closely. I think there's been a lot of attention as what's going on in China. People know the role that China plays economically. They also know that with the Belt and Road, China has launched mankind on a new trajectory, a trajectory towards development. And this has created a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, especially within the developing sector, but also if we look in Europe, there's also excitement there because prior to the Belt and Road initiation, the world economy was going downward. And this is a trajectory upward. And now China, with the Congress, has consolidated that in the party constitution. So this is going to continue. And here in the United States, people are really excited, moving in the direction of development. You won't get it maybe from the pundits, but you will get it from the state leaders, state governors, and all the people who are concerned about the economy. What's going on in China, they hope can also happen here in collaboration between the United States and China.
as you said, is an upward trajectory. Many data actually being published throughout the conference, and also many new ideas being proposed. What are those that you are impressed with?
The most important thing, I think, was the fact that the Communist Party has been reinvigorated around the notion of the people's livelihood. That's always been a part of the Communist Party doctrine from the get-go. This is why it was formed. But I think that President Xi, with this Congress, has now made this into the major factor and direction of all the members of the Communist Party. And I think that's very exciting. It's exciting for people in China. I wish other governments would also express the same direction in their own countries. The second part of it is, of course, the fact that the Chinese foreign policy, which is now going to play a major role in forming world history, is also been enshrined in the direction of the party, which is aiming at bringing development that we have seen in China to other countries in the world. And I think that has caused a new trajectory, a new geometry for mankind, and that this is going to continue. And I think when President Trump meets President Xi, both of whom are interested in infrastructure, they can come to terms over how to work together to try and develop for the benefit of both nations and for the benefit of the world.
And let's expand a little bit on foreign policy. In his report to the 19th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping mentioned a new era quite a few times, calling upon all parties to adapt. That also includes foreign policy. So what do you think China-U.S. relations will evolve short-term and long-term?
Well, I think with the present direction, especially with President Trump's desire to have an infrastructure program, that can become the glue which can bring the two countries together. There are other problems that have to be dealt with on trade, the Korean nuclear situation. All of these are going to be very contentious, but I think that the two presidents have a chemistry. I think there's mutual respect on both sides. And I think that's the most important thing to move this thing forward. But the fact that both of them are oriented towards development, towards creating a better society for mankind during their term of office, I think that will help to lead to the kind of collaboration that the world needs. Because if these two countries work together, mankind is going to move forward. And if they can't find a way of doing it, it's going to be extremely difficult for everybody. So I'm optimistic about the upcoming meeting, and I think they have common interest. President Xi has stressed that common destiny of mankind. We're all in the boat together. We got to stick together, as he said. And I think that is a message that also President Trump can also understand, and the United States will work together with China.
All right. Thank you for your optimistic note on that. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for your insights. Now let's come back to our studio discussions. Mr. Xu Sitao, the chairman of the Deloitte Group, and also Martin Jacques, the author of When China Rules the World. Let's talk about the internal and external challenges of the new leadership. The new term, the new buzzword is the Chinese, is the socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Many people are still not so sure about what exactly that signifies and what kind of policy changes will entail. What's your idea?
So my idea is when you emphasize socialism with Chinese characteristic, I think that means better, more fairness and a better income distribution. In fact, throughout the work report, a lot of emphasis was on poverty reduction. So that's my takeaway. And the new era means the past growth model has to be changed, and due to the constraint of environment, so on and so forth. So that's my reflection.
So you're saying the development mode should change, and also distribution mode should be changed.
Yes. So in other words, I think what China has to do is to just bring down the growth rate in the short term to medium term, and to cope with certain stress in the system, for example, financial system. And central bank governor actually has discuss this during the party congress. And of course, income distribution is very important.
And Martin, do you think the CPC has nailed the problems China could face in the future?
Well, on socialism with Chinese characteristics, my reading of this, but it's obviously partly a guess, is that it's very significant. And it does mark some kind of shift, some kind of departure. Now the term has been used, I think the first time it was used in a Congress was in 1992 by Deng Xiaoping. And basically since then it's been repeated and so on, but relatively speaking, sotto voce, quite quietly. It's not been given tremendous emphasis. It's part of what the party stands for, but shouldn't be exaggerated. Now I think it represents some significant turn, and I think the turn, I agree with Sata about this, I think, that what it represents is a view, particularly by Xi Jinping, that China is not just historically different, culturally different, but is also systemically different, to emphasize that systemic difference. You know, in a whole era, since the late 1970s, early 80s, in the West was dominated by neoliberalism. And this was true right the way up until the Western financial crisis.
And they think the rest of the world should just adopt it.
No, they did. The West certainly thinks that. And often, Deng Xiaoping and his market reforms and so on were part of that. Now, I disagree with that profoundly, but nonetheless, that was the way it was read. Now, I think that what Xi Jinping is driving at here, probably, is that no, that is not the way we're moving. No, this is going to be, we're looking for, as you say, a fairer society and so on. And I think the next period, you know, that there's been this tremendous emphasis on poverty reduction ever since 1978, really, wonderful achievements. But that is mainly a rural versus urban question. Now China is becoming such an urbanized society, and wealth inequality has increased so much to the point where it's now rivals that of the United States.
So it's a different set of challenges.
The key issue, I think, increasingly for China is inequality of wealth and income, and how to deal with that, because it can't be allowed to carry on as it has so far.
Or it
so
will
the priority, I think, is
political
going
instability if inequality is not
of course.
tackled.
I mean, we've seen what happens in the West. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen in China, but in the West, what has driven populism, the rebellion against the governing classes and so on, is perhaps more than anything else a sense that this is a deeply unfair society and that inequality has gone out of control.
All right, thank you very much. You're now watching a special broadcast on CGTN. We'll see the new lineup of CPC's leadership very soon. Don't go, I'll be right back.
Every 5 years, the Chinese Communist Party holds its National Congress. This month, the 19th Congress opens in Beijing. It will elect a new central leadership and chart the course for the party as well as the country over the next 5 years and beyond. Who will step into the party's top leadership, the Politburo Standing Committee? Will the Congress look to amend the party constitution? Which direction will the anti-corruption campaign be heading? How will the CPC manage the Chinese economy, foreign affairs, and military? Tune into CGTN for all the answers as the CPC decides.
In a report delivered at the opening of the 19th National Congress of the CPC, the General Secretary Xi Jinping said China's development has entered a new era. So, why is now a new era? Well, that's because China has achieved a tremendous transformation. It's stood up, it's grown rich, and it's become strong. And socialism with Chinese characteristics has been developing over the years. It's now charting a new historic direction for the development of China, which will both inherit the past and forge ahead into the future. Well, in this new era, the principal contradiction facing Chinese society has also evolved, and what China faces now is the contradiction between unbalanced and inadequate development and the people's ever-growing needs for a better life. That indicates that the country will not only continue its economic development, but also pay more attention to its social development. As China moves into this new era of development and modernization, it will offer the world a Chinese approach to solving the problems facing mankind.
So in about 20 minutes, the new members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the CPC will meet the press. And before that, what is going on in other parts of the world? Let's turn to my colleague Rachel. Rachel.
All right, so thank you. We begin with U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who is currently in Pakistan on the latest leg of his tour of the Middle East and South Asia. Tillerson met with Pakistan's Prime Minister, and as CGTN's Daniel Khan reports, on the agenda was a topic that is a constant source of tension between the two countries.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has arrived in Pakistan to stress the importance of fighting Islamic extremists, denying them safe havens on Pakistani territory. He met Pakistan's Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and the heads of the Pakistani Army and Intelligence Services. Tillerson told Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi that Pakistan and US have a shared interest in providing peace and security to the entire region. A safer environment would encourage more trade. The Prime Minister assured Tillerson that Pakistan is committed in the war against terror. Abbasi said both countries are strategic partners in a global war against terror. Abbasi has recently pointed out that over 200,000 Pakistani troops are now fighting the world's largest war against terrorism. US officials have accused Pakistan of harboring Afghani Taliban fighters and another Afghan insurgent group, the Haqqani Network. In Pakistan, critics of the US say Washington has been mounting undue pressure on Pakistan. Islamabad has fought a war on terror for nearly 2 decades, has lost over 60,000 lives and experienced billions of dollars in economic losses due to terrorism. For its part, Pakistan has erected a fence along the 2,300-kilometer border with Afghanistan to keep the Taliban from entering its territory. Earlier this month, Pakistani security forces recovered a US-Canadian family from Taliban captivity. Apart from US's allegations, Pakistan has reservations about Washington's South Asian strategy. As part of that strategy, US President Donald Trump said that India should play a greater role in Afghanistan. Experts say it will take mutual effort to bring the decades-old war to an end, and for that, there should be a strong foundation of trust between US and Pakistan. Daniel Khan, CGTN, Islamabad.
Russia has vetoed a UN Security Council draft resolution on the extension of the mandate of the Joint Investigation Mechanism, or JIM. The mechanism was tasked to determine who was responsible for the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Among the 15 members of the Security Council, 11 were in favor, 2 were against, and another 2 abstained. After the vote, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said it was disappointed at Russia's vote. Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, said his country will return to this matter, adding the mandate should work in a professional, objective, and impartial way. Iraq's Kurdistan postponed next week's elections for president and parliament by 8 months. On Monday, the Electoral Commission said political parties had failed to present candidates for both elections. Turmoil has rocked the region since last month's vote for independence. Last week, Iraqi forces captured from the Kurds the oil-rich city of Kirkuk, dealing a severe blow to Kurdistan's president. Kenyan police used bullets and tear gas to disperse a small protest in Nairobi 2 days before a rerun of the presidential election. The main opposition leader, Raila Odinga, appeared to step back from a call for his supporters to protest during the vote. Last week, police say Odinga's supporters disrupted at least 3 pre-polling events, seriously injuring some staff. Brazil's President Michel Temer has made policy and spending concessions in an effort to survive a congressional vote on corruption charges on Wednesday that has put his reform agenda at risk. To please the powerful farm lobby that has 2/5 of the votes in the lower house, Temer agreed to lower fines for environmental damage. He attempted to relax the definition of slave labor, but was forced to backtrack after an outcry. Temer faces charges in a bribery case based on testimony by an owner of the world's largest meat packer, SBSSA, that has implicated several of his cabinet ministers. Look at what's happening in the world today. I'll hand it back to my colleague Zoe Wei for more.
Thank you, Rachel. And in about 15 minutes, the new leadership of the Central Committee's Standing Committee, the Politburo members will be announced, and also we will have a live broadcast on Meet the Press session of the new members of the CPC Politburo Standing Committee members. Don't go away, be right back.
In a report delivered at the opening of the 19th National Congress of the CPC, the General Secretary Xi Jinping said China's development has entered a new era. So, why is now a new era? Well, that's because China has achieved a tremendous transformation. It's stood up, it's grown rich, and it's become strong. And socialism, with Chinese characteristics, has been developing over the years. It's now charting a new historic direction for the development of China, which will both inherit the past and forge ahead into the future. Well, in this new era, the principal contradiction facing Chinese society has also evolved, and what China faces now is the contradiction between unbalanced and inadequate development and the people's ever-growing needs for a better life. That indicates that the country will not only continue its economic development, but also pay more attention to its social development. As China moves into this new era of development and modernization, it will offer the world a Chinese approach to solving the problems facing mankind.
As the eyes of the world turn to Beijing for the 19th CPC National Congress, several production teams wrapping up their insightful documentary on the transformation of China over the past 5 years. Let's take a look.
Poverty alleviation, the rapid growth of e-commerce, and high-speed rail. Those are just some of the tremendous changes in China that foreign production teams want to capture. Rob Slater, producer of the documentary series China, Time of Xi, shares his impression of the ever-changing country.
I think the teams were quite amazed at the sort of level of innovation that was taking place in really remote and rural areas. So there was an e-commerce story taking place in a village next to a tea plantation. There is a drone story operating by X-Aircraft in Ningxia. And so these sort of things, along with the big infrastructure projects like the high-speed train and the new roads and new schools, all of these things are, impressive to anybody, whether you've been there before or not.
How has China managed to do that? What is the philosophy behind President Xi Jinping's government? Slater's documentary series, China, Time of Xi, seeks the answers. The 3-episode documentary series showcases historic events that have taken place under Xi's leadership and sheds light on the country's dynamic landscape. Each episode investigates the pillars of Xi's political ideologies and economic strategies.
Discovery Asia had decided earlier in the year that they wanted a high-profile series to coincide with the 19th National Congress in order to allow their audience to learn more about President Xi, his policies and his strategies.
Apart from China, Time of Xi, Slater's team has also documented other China-themed stories, such as China Icon and The Secret of China. Stories about China's development are extremely popular with global audiences.
To give you an example, China from Above, which was a co-production
by NHNZ, Beach House Pictures, CICC, National Geographic Channels International, and NDR. It went viral, and with 130 million views on Tencent in the first 2 weeks of its release. And that's amazing for us, especially on a digital scale.
The rush to document China is not only driven by market forces, but also propelled by China's opening up and reforms policies.
It's not so much international media houses pouring resources into China stories. It's more of an opening up of China, and I've seen an opening up of the China documentary industry and market.
As Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the CPC, said in a work report delivered during the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, China should secure a decisive victory in building a moderately prosperous society in all respects and strive for the great success of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. A more confident China will definitely attract more attention around the globe.
Now let's go live to our reporter once again, Han Peng and Sonny Matu. They are now outside the Great Hall of the People. Well, the new party leadership will soon meet the press and the world. They are the top decision makers in Chinese Communist Party hierarchy. Give us a brief overview of how collective leadership actually works in China.
Exactly, Zoe. Here, before we start, let me introduce again my colleague Sonny joining us here in this Great Hall of People. She comes all the way from Nairobi, Africa, right?
Yes, Kenya.
Kenya, yes. And actually here we are expecting the unveiling of the members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo coming out in just a few minutes right here behind me in the Great Hall of the People, and we're expecting some big news happening here.
Well, from my understanding in the past, if the past is anything to go by, the Political Bureau has always maintained an odd number.
Exactly, that's very important because the reason behind it is to make sure that once there is a voting, that there is a result of the voting. That is because the Communist Party is not actually a one-person rule, but rather it is a collective leadership. That was the official term has been called. So
in the past, we've had though that Xi Jinping has really established himself at the core of the Political Bureau, perhaps even influencing the opinions of the members.
Exactly, that's also very true. So the General Secretary Xi Jinping, the core, has a big influence over the opinions of other peoples, particularly the members of the Standing Committee, the people around him. But whenever there is really a big difference among the members of the Standing Committee or even the Central Committee members of the Communist Party, they need to sit down and vote. So in this way, whenever there is voting, it follows the principle of one person, one vote. So whoever you are, either the president or general secretary or other people or just an ordinary member, you have one vote. So it's impossible for anyone to push their policy through by ignoring the overwhelming opposition of the overwhelming vote.
So we really do not know who is going to be unveiled today, and in just a few minutes we'll probably find out. But what we do know is the fact that they have such ambitious targets set ahead for them. For example, we are hearing that Xi Jinping wants to eradicate poverty in just a few years. We know there are heavy environmental policies that are being implemented. China wants to experience 80% of the year with a blue sky.
Exactly,
Such
that's very exciting.
Targets, yeah.
Yes, and also providing internet for everyone by 2020. And all these targets serve through only one goal of China, which is to build up a so-called moderately prosperous society in all respects for everyone by the year 2020. And if you think about it, it's only 3 years later, so it's just quite a short period of time. And also, no matter who comes out from the conference hall, it's definitely going to be some tough job ahead for all these people. Back to Zoe.
All right, thank you so much, Han Peng and Sonny, from outside the Great Hall of the People. Let's come back to our studio discussions. This time around, Xi's thoughts is enshrined in the party constitution. Some people say this gives him more leverage. His stature is already on par with Chairman Mao and Deng Xiaoping. And he has more consolidated power to push ahead his agenda. Martin?
Well, without question, he's established himself over the last 5 years as the absolutely central figure in China. And he's become associated with a series of really important initiatives. Chinese Dream, Belt and Road, AAIB, and so on. Quite extraordinary, really, in such a short space of time. And perhaps above all, I mean, I think if you ask me for one thing which expresses his position and his approach, it is the idea that China can find a new place in the world. I mean, this is really such an historic shift, because ever since the end of the 19th century, when China was weak, declining, divided, occupied, it was forced to abandon historically what it stood for and accept the European norms, the international system. And now really Xi Jinping is saying, no, this is no longer the situation. China can take its rightful place in the world.
But very soon we will see the new lineup of the CPC's leadership coming out and meet the press. They will probably walk in ranks to meet the journalists inside the Great Hall of the People. Let's come back to the political discussions. Well, the CPC has been maintaining the principle of collective leadership.
Yeah.
But with Mr. Xi with more consolidated power, is there some fine-tuning of governance?
Well, I think fine-tuning will be maybe in the past 10 years. In certain situations, we had a decision-making gridlock. So that has explained the fact, anti-corruption drive has been so strong in past 5 years. So in that sense, that's a shift. But I still believe, what your colleague said in front of the People's Hall. It is a collective leadership. I think that's a lesson we have learned in past 60 years. The decisions in the end is going to be collective leadership.
And Martin mentioned that the China solution, the China approach. What exactly is China's solution approach politically and economically? And what are the things that maybe other developing nations can take elements from?
I think China's approach is, first of all, you don't want to be too pragmatic. I think Deng Xiaoping has this famous line.
You don't want to be too.
You don't want to be too dogmatic. So whether the color of cat is white or black, so long as it catches mouse, right? That was what I said. I think that's still holds true in China. So the lesson.
And you think that is enticing to other emerging economies?
Well,
in the developing world?
because other developing countries, if they just want to follow the textbook, and they can never get started. So, for example, one of the lessons in China is before you have sustainable development, you need to have very, very good infrastructure. I think that's a key lesson from China.
And that takes strong leadership?
That takes strong leadership, and that takes a sacrifice, that takes a focused effort. So it takes many things.
So Martin, I want you to elaborate on that, because with growing power of China and reaching out to the world, do you think the rest of the world is ready to take on China as a global power and learn from China's examples to do their own business?
Yes, I think that across the developing world, we've got to distinguish between the developed world and the developing world. In the developing world, I think that increasingly the eyes have been on China and what China has done and so on. Now, I think it's important to emphasize that no other country in the world can do what China has done. Because China is quite exceptional in all sorts of ways, in terms of size, in terms of its history, and so on. And China's always emphasized, we're not a model for you. The question is, what can you take away from what we have done
what would that
will be good for you? Well, I think that I agree with the point Stateowned makes about the importance of pragmatism, about infrastructure, about investment. If possible, yes. I mean, let's say the centrality of the state. That's important to emphasize, because remember the previous consensus for developing world from the West was the Washington Consensus. What was that? Privatization, roll back the state. And what's happened? We don't even talk about it anymore. So the state is very important. And I think in countries like Ethiopia, you can see a certain borrowing from the Chinese experience in relationship to this. Now, I think that China's affinity with the developing world is absolutely central to what's happening in the world today. See, in a way, you can say China is part of the developing world, and the great phenomenon of the last 50 to 70 years has been the rise of the developing world, led now clearly by China.
What about the developed world in Europe and North America? How would they respond to the changing map of geopolitics and economy in the world?
Well, I think with great difficulty. You know, if you've been running the world for 200 odd years, it becomes, you know, part of what you are.
With a strong faith in their exceptionalism.
Yeah, of course. Their faith in exceptionalism can be summed up with their attitude, which is, you've got to be like us. If you're going to make it, you've got to be like us. China should be like us. If China's not like us, then it's somehow never going to make it. That has been the Western attitude,
but I think
and still is in important.
There are some change in perceptions in the West about whether China will be like us anytime soon or even anytime.
I think, first of all, every country is different. I don't think there's a template for growth model. I also think China and the West can learn from each other. You know, I think the West can take a more long-term view, you know, to view things in a more strategic manner, and to indeed, and the state is a very important actor as a stakeholder. I think Germany actually is doing extremely well on that front. At the same time, China can also, for example, to learn from the West and to develop our own civil society.
You mean civil society, but do you think China is not been developing a strong civil society?
Well, not yet, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? We haven't reached that stage yet, because right now we are still in the early stage of economic development. Our per capita GDP right now is between $8,000 to $9,000, right? So our goal is to move away from middle income trap.
Martin, what do you think of this? Because yes, China should learn something from the West, as the West should learn something from China. Stateowned is mentioning that maybe we should have more energy from bottom up in a way.
Well, I think that so far China's learnt a lot from the West, and the West has not learnt very much from China, and that is, let's be honest about it. Let's be honest
the deficit is
so,
in that direction.
And the reason for that is, firstly, because it doesn't think it needs to learn, and secondly, because it doesn't want to learn from China. That's the mentality. Now, it's true that that's beginning to shift, that attitude now. Why? Well, one, China's achievements, and secondly, an almighty crisis in the West, which started with the Western financial crisis, stagnation, and now a big political crisis. So the West has lost its confidence. I mean, if you look at Europe, for example, I mean, all these...
But still, they're not thinking twice about their systems, have they?
On the contrary, I think that we are seeing, when I say a political crisis, we are seeing a crisis of the governing elites and some of their institutions. And this is very widespread. I mean, what's happened to the party system in France? It more or less disappeared at the last election. If you look at what's happening in Eastern Europe, Hungary and Poland and so on are going in their own particular direction. Look at Britain at the moment with the Brexit vote and so on. I mean, I come from Britain, and I don't think, or certainly since in my whole lifetime, Britain has never faced
but the political
a governance
infrastructure
crisis
in the West remains intact, and
well,
I think any appetite of a fundamental change.
No, but I think that what happens in a situation like this, we're not going to see a huge, massive upheaval. I don't think generally. I'm not talking in those terms. What I'm talking about is a sense of decay, a sense of a loss of trust in the arrangements we have at the moment, a loss of confidence about the West and where it's going, and now looking at China in a different way. You know, it's one thing for West to be doing well at a time that China's doing well. What happens when China's doing well and the West is doing badly? Then you start looking at China slowly, admittedly, but slowly through different eyes. Maybe there's some answers for us here. You know, first of all, you know, cooperation. In climate change, in Belt and Road, and so on. That's the way it's. I think somehow it's likely to proceed.
And also the communication problem.
Yeah.
In order to let the people and also the ruling class to see what is happening in China, communication is important.
Yeah, communication is a big problem. Which is true. I mean, you look at the coverage on China in general is very one-dimensional, right? So sometimes overwhelmingly positive, some overwhelmingly negative. So it's very one-dimensional. So you can see that. So that has to be changed, I think. But from China's perspective, we also have to understand when China was small, right? China was not being paid attention. But today, everyone is watching China. So, example, in a major economy, a central bank may have to study the Chinese economy more instead of some of the regional problems.
As he said, China is now front and center in the world stage.
So we need to also be used to the fact, and we are going to be watched, we are going to be scrutinized.
And let's talk a little bit about the changing geopolitics, of course. Of course, China have a greater say in the world affairs, but a lot of people are wondering what kind of world order China will be comfortable with. What kind of changes will happen in the global order? Martin, what do you think China's philosophy can reshape the global institution, and to which direction?
Well, I think there's a short term and a long term here. In the short term, I think China it will behave and has behaved in a very responsible and sensible way. You know, Chinese pragmatism at its best, if you like. So it participates in the big institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and so on. But if it sees them not working properly, then what has it done? It stepped in, New Development Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Belt and Road. These were things which no international institution essentially were taking care of. So I think that, for example...
So you're saying China should be more humble, is too proactive?
No, on the contrary. I think that this period of proactivism, which started 2012, 2013, has been extremely important. Because without it, what's going to happen to infrastructure in Asia? If you wait for the World Bank and the IMF to sort it out, it'll never get sorted out. So I think that's very important. And so I think that China's position is both pragmatic and transformative. Pragmatic, contribute, responsible global citizen, and so on. Transformative, there's these following really serious problems. No one's doing anything about it. We offer this as an approach to handle these questions.
So basically the age of keeping a low profile and biding for its time is over?
Not entirely over yet. I think, first of all, as the largest trading nation, I mean, China is still benefiting from the existing system. China has been the major beneficiary of free trade, globalization. I think China knows that. I think policymakers are very, again, very pragmatic. But at the same time, for the existing institutions, they have been there for a long time. They need to be reformed. And
because of the failing of the advanced economies?
No, because...
or is it because of the changing
just
way?
Inertia. Some of these institutions, they were being created after World War II, so there haven't been a lot of changes. So for example, red tape. So it's good to have competition. So in this case, I think China's role is to create impetus for changes.
But do people worry? Because according to the vision of President Xi, One Belt, One Road, that will create a large, gigantic entity connecting Europe and Asia. The Eurocontinent's face will be changed because of this. Do other countries feel comfortable with this scheme when China is taking the leading role in championing this cause?
I think that it depends which countries we're talking about. I mean, I think some countries, certainly on the landmass of the Eurasian landmass, are looking forward to it and see big opportunities for themselves in this situation.
Okay. Let's try to go back to the great hall of the people. The new members of the new Politburo Standing Committee will very soon meet the press, and General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party will introduce them.
各位来宾，大家好。Friends of the press and guests, good morning. 今天上午，中国共产党第19届中央委员会召开第1次全体会议，选举产生了新一届中央领导机构。我们非常高兴地邀请到新当选的中共中央总书记和各位常委 同中外记者见面。
Earlier this morning, the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China held its first plenary session and elected a new central leadership. It is my privilege to invite the newly elected General Secretary and other members of the Political Bureau Standing Committee to meet Chinese and foreign press.
现在，让我们以热烈的掌声欢迎总书记和各位常委。
Now please join me in a warm applause to greet the General Secretary and other Political Bureau Standing Committee members.
让我们热烈欢迎中共中央总书记习近平同志讲话。
Let us warmly welcome General Secretary Xi Jinping to deliver some remarks.
女士们、先生们、
Ladies and
同志
gentlemen,
们、朋友们，
comrades
大家
and
好。
friends, good morning.
昨天，中国共产党
Yesterday,
第19次全国代
the
表大会
19th National
已经闭幕
Congress of the Communist Party of China was
这一次
concluded.
来了许多记者朋友，有些是
I
远道而来。
see a lot of our journalists,
我了
especially
解
a lot
你
of
们
friends
对
coming
大
far
会
away.
做了许多的报道，很充分的报道，大家辛苦了，你们这些报道引起了全世界的广泛的关注，我向你们表示衷心的感谢。
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, good morning. The 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China was concluded yesterday. The Party Congress has received extensive and detailed reporting by our friends from the press, with many of you coming from afar. You have worked very hard, and your media coverage has captured the attention of the world. I want to say a big thank you to you all.
大会开幕以来一共有165个国家、452个主要政党发来了855份贺电、贺信，其中有814份是国家元首、政府首脑、政党和重要组织机构的领导人发来的。在此，我仅代表中国共产党中央委员会向他们表示诚挚的谢意。
Since the opening of the Party Congress, 452 major political parties in 165 countries have sent 855 messages of congratulation. Of these, 814 came from heads of state or government, or the leaders of political parties or important organizations. On behalf of the CPC Central Committee, I wish to convey our sincere appreciation to them all.
在刚才召开的中共19届一中全会上，选举产生了新一届中共中央领导机构。全会选举我继续担任中共中央委员会总书记，这是对我的肯定，更是鞭策和激励。
We have just held the first plenary session of the 19th Central Committee and elected a new central leadership. I was re-elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. I see this as not just approval of my work, but also encouragement that will spur me on.
现在我向大家介绍一下当选的其他6位常委同志。
Now I wish to present to you the other 6 members who have also been elected to the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau.
李克强同志。
Comrade 李克强。
栗战书同志。
Comrade 栗战书。
汪洋同志。
Comrade 汪洋。
王沪宁同志。
Comrade 王沪宁。
赵乐际同志。
Comrade 赵乐际。
韩正同志。
And Comrade 韩正。
其中李克强同志是18届中央政治局常委，其他的5位同志呢都是18届中央的政治局委员。他们呢，这个更多的一些信息资料大家可以通过媒体渠道获取到。我在这里就不再详细的介绍。
Comrade 李克强 served on the Political Bureau Standing Committee of the 18th CPC Central Committee, while all the others were members of the Political Bureau of the 18th CPC Central Committee. You can learn more about them from the media.
在这里，我代表新一届中共中央领导成员，衷心感谢全党同志对我们的信任。我们一定恪尽职守，勤勉工作，不辱使命，不负重托。
Here, on behalf of the newly elected central leadership, I wish to express our heartfelt thanks to all other members of the party for the trust they have placed in us. We will work diligently to meet our duty, fulfill our mission, and be worthy of their trust.
过去的5年，我们做了很多的工作，有的已经完成了，有的还要继续做下去。中共19大又提出了新目标、新任务，我们要统筹抓好落实。
Over the past 5 years, we have set out a broad agenda. Some tasks have been completed, while others need more work. This Party Congress has set new goals and new tasks. We must make coordinated efforts to see them through.
经过长期努力，中国特色社会主义进入了新时代。新时代要有新气象，更要有新作为。中共19大到下一次的20大，这5年正处在实现2个100年奋斗目标的历史交汇期。第1个100年目标要实现，第2个100年奋斗目标要开篇。这其中有一些重要的时间的节点，是我们工作的坐标。
With decades of hard work, socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era. In this new context, we must get a new look and, more importantly, make new accomplishments. The coming 5 years between the 19th and the 20th Party Congress is a period in which the time frames of the 2 centenary goals will converge. Not only must we deliver the first centenary goal, we must also embark on the journey towards the second centenary goal. As I look ahead to the next 5 years, I see several important junctures and signposts.
2018年，我们将迎来改革开放40周年。改革开放是决定当代中国命运的关键一招。40年的改革开放使中国人民生活实现了小康，逐步富裕起来了。我们将总结经验，乘势而上，继续推进国家治理体系和治理能力现代化，坚定不移深化各方面的改革，坚定不移地扩大开放，使改革和开放相互促进，相得益彰。我坚信，中华民族伟大复兴必将在改革开放的进程中得以实现。
In 2018, we will mark the 40th anniversary of the launch of reform and opening up. Reform and opening up is a crucial move that is shaping China's future. 40 years of reform and opening up has made it possible for our people to lead decent and even comfortable lives. We will review our experience and build on the good momentum to continue modernizing China's system and capacity for governance, and make determined efforts to comprehensively deepen reform and open China still wider to the world. We will see that reform and opening up complement and reinforce each other. It is my conviction that the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation will become a reality in the course of reform and opening up.
2019年，我们将迎来中华人民共和国成立70周年。我们将贯彻新发展理念，推动中国经济持续健康发展，惠及中国人民和各国人民。我们将继续落实好“十三五”规划确定的各项任务，并对未来发展作出新的规划，推动各项事业全面发展，把我们的人民共和国建设得更加繁荣富强。
In 2019, we will mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. We will act on the new vision for development and strive for sustained and healthy economic growth that benefits people in China and around the world. We will continue our efforts to accomplish all the tasks laid down in the 13th Five-Year Plan, develop new blueprints for China's future, and see the flourishing of all our endeavors. These efforts will contribute towards a more prosperous and strong People's Republic.
2020年，我们将全面建成小康社会。全面建成小康社会，一个也不能少。共同富裕路上，一个也不能掉队。我们将举全党全国之力，坚决完成脱贫攻坚任务，确保兑现我们的承诺。我们要牢记，人民对美好生活的向往，就是我们的奋斗目标。坚持以人民为中心的发展思想，努力抓好保障和改善民生各项工作，不断增强人民的获得感、幸福感、安全感，不断推进全体人民共同富裕。我坚信，中国人民的生活一定会一年更比一年好。
In 2020, we will establish a moderately prosperous society across all metrics. This is a society to be enjoyed by each and every one of us. On the march towards common prosperity, no one must be left behind. We will mobilize the whole party and the whole country in a resolute push to deliver on our pledge and eradicate poverty in China. The aspirations of the people to live a better life must always be the focus of our efforts. We must remain committed to a people-centered philosophy of development, strive to ensure and improve living standards, and make steady progress towards enhancing our people's sense of fulfillment, happiness, and security, and towards realizing common prosperity for everyone. I have no doubt in my mind that our people's lives will see further improvement year after year.
2021年，我们将迎来中国共产党成立100周年。中国共产党立志于中华民族千秋伟业，100年恰是风华正茂。中国共产党是世界上最大的政党，大就要有大的样子。实践充分证明，中国共产党能够带领人民进行伟大的社会革命，也能够进行伟大的自我革命。我们要永葆蓬勃朝气，永远做人民公仆、时代先锋、民族脊梁。全面从严治党永远在路上，不能有任何喘口气、歇歇脚的念头。我们将继续清除一切侵蚀党的健康机体的病毒，大力营造风清气正的政治生态，以全党的强大正能量，在全社会凝聚起推动中国发展进步的磅礴力量。
In 2021, we will mark the centenary of the Communist Party of China. For the party which fights for the eternal well-being of the Chinese nation, the centenary only ushers in the prime of life. As the world's largest political party, the CPC must behave in a way commensurate with this status. Its history makes it abundantly clear that the CPC is capable of not only spearheading a great social revolution, but also imposing a great reform on itself. We, as its members, must always have a youthful spirit and forever be the servants of the people, the vanguard of the times, and the backbone of our nation. Exercising full and rigorous governance over the party is a journey to which there is no end. We should never entertain the idea of taking a breather or halting our steps. Instead, we must continue to rid ourselves of any virus that erodes the party's fabric, make great efforts to foster a healthy political environment of integrity, and generate waves of positive energy throughout our party, which can then build into a mighty nationwide force, driving China's development and progress.
中国共产党和中国人民从苦难中走过来，深知和平的珍贵，发展的价值。中国人民自信、自尊，将坚定维护国家主权、安全、发展利益，同时将同各国人民一道，积极推动构建人类命运共同体，不断为人类和平与发展的崇高事业做出新的、更大的贡献。
The Communist Party of China and the Chinese people have gone through trials and tribulations. These experiences have taught us that peace is precious and development must be valued. With confidence and pride, the Chinese people will be steadfast in upholding our country's sovereignty, security, and development interests. We will also work with other nations to build a global community with a shared future and make new and greater contributions to the noble cause of peace and development for all humanity.
历史是人民书写的，一切成就归功于人民。只要我们深深扎根人民，紧紧依靠人民，就可以获得无穷的力量。风雨无阻，奋勇向前。
The people are the creators of history. It is to them that we owe all our achievements. As long as we firmly align ourselves with the people and rely on them, we can and will have boundless energy to forge ahead, come rain or shine.
俗语说啊，百闻不如一见呐。我们欢迎各位记者朋友在中国多走走，多看看。继续关注中共19大之后中国的发展变化，更加全面地了解和报道中国。
As the saying goes, it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. We encourage members of the press to visit and see more of China. We hope that after the Party Congress, you will continue to follow China's development and progress, and learn about and report on more dimensions of China.
我们不需要更多的溢美之词，我们一贯欢迎客观的介绍和有益的建议。正所谓，不要人夸颜色好，只留清气满乾坤。谢谢大家。
We do not need lavish praise from others. However, we do welcome objective reporting and constructive suggestions. For this is our motto. Not angling for compliments, I'd be content that my integrity fills the universe. Thank you.
见面活动到此结束，感谢习近平总书记和各位常委，谢谢各位记者朋友，谢谢各位来宾。
This is the end of today's press event. Thank you, General Secretary Xi and other Political Bureau Standing Committee members. Thank you, friends from the press and other guests.
好，再见。
General Secretary Xi Jinping, the newly elected General Secretary of the CPC, and his 6 colleagues, the members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the CPC, just met the press. And General Secretary Xi Jinping outlined his plans and approach to build China in the coming 5 years. And that was the press briefing of the newly elected CPC Standing Committee of the Politburo. And the news is Xi Jinping was elected General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee for the second term at the first plenum of the 19th CPC Central Committee on Wednesday. Members of the newly elected Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 19th CPC Central Committee are Xi Jinping, Li Keqiang, Li Zhanshu, Wang Yang, Wang Huning, Zhao Leji, and Han Zheng. These are the newly elected leadership of the CPC. They will rule the party and the country in the coming 5 years. Stateowned, what do you think of the new leadership lineup?
I think it's a very good lineup. I think not only we have the policy continuity, and we are also getting new blood, so people with quite extraordinary Wang Yang. I think it's a very good lineup.
Martin, 5 members of the Standing Committee are new additions to the
That's a big turnover. That's a big change. So inevitably, that will leave its mark in the coming period, because there will be the majority of the members of the Standing Committee are fresh to the task.
And General Secretary Xi Jinping said that his plan is to push forward the agenda of reform and elevate people's livelihood. What would be the major challenges for him and his team?
I think that, well, in some kind of order, first of all, carrying on the economic reform program and sustaining the structural changes and the growth rate at the same time. I think that's always going to be probably the most important top of the agenda. Secondly, I think developing the party, continuing the anti-corruption campaign. I mean, a lot of emphasis actually in what he was saying about the importance of the party, you know, being able to move on, not get stuck, not decay, you know, kill the virus and so on, where they exist.
But obviously there will be leadership at the CPC Central Discipline Inspection Committee, because during the past Standing Committee members, Wang Qishan was in charge of that. There will be new people in charge of that.
Yeah,
but you think the momentum will be there? There was no laxation of anti-corruption campaign?
I don't think so, no. I mean, well, I think the institutionalization was essential, because before it was still rather in the manner of a party campaign. And now I think with the changes that seem to be in place for it, or intended for it, this will make it a much more permanent structure, which it needs to be, because, you know, plenty of countries have had anti-corruption campaigns and they work for a period, and then when they come to an end, things tend to revert. I don't think that's the intention. I think it'll be carried forward.
What is the institutional guarantee for the CPC to carry on anti-corruption drive?
I think that I think that the real driving force behind it has been the fact that the spread of corruption in the party was sapping the faith of the people and trust of the people in too many party and government officials, and that unless the party did something about it, it could have very serious consequences. I mean, I think that was laid out, and I think that was absolutely right, and I think it's made a big difference. And not just even, I mean, basically it's been interpreted mainly so far as a Chinese thing, but I don't see it just as a Chinese thing. I think this problem of corruption is a global problem. You know, just as in China, it's a result of marketization and globalization and new kind of opportunities. So that's not just specific to China, that's a global phenomenon, and it needs to be tackled everywhere. And I think that China's initiative in relationship to anti-corruption is one that should become normative globally, and not just specific to China.
And Stateowned, what do you think are the major challenges for the new leadership?
I think the main challenge is, I think a lot of these goals, objectives is very important. And what really resonates me is poverty reduction. I think President Xi has stressed that 3 times during that maybe 20 minutes speech, right? I think that's extremely important. So that goal is important, but at the same time, and whether we want to achieve other goals, so I think there has to be an order. You know, you cannot
prioritize.
Yeah, prioritize. I think priorities are very important. So I would say income distribution is important, and to improve financial sector quality and to prevent crisis, that's important. So maybe some other goals can be just not put in the back burner, but maybe a less priority. So for example, GDP growth target, I think that goal perhaps has to be less stressed.
All right. And now we have another expert on the line. That's Mr. Li Cheng. He is the director of John Thornton China Center and a senior fellow in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. So Cheng Li, you've seen the new leadership lined up. You were surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I think it's a wonderful group of people. I think each of them has a very strong credential. Look at Li Zhansu. He worked in 4 provinces as provincial leader. Start from Hebei, then also Heilongjiang, Shanxi, and lastly Guizhou. He also served as chief of staff for Xi Jinping, as really always on Xi Jinping's side during domestic trip and international trip. The next person is Wang Yang, as we know that he was the leader of both Guangdong and Chongqing, and also served in the State Council for a long time, first as Deputy General Secretary, then as Vice Premier. And the third person is Wang Funing. He was a law professor and the dean of the Fudan Law School, and he certainly is a brand for many generation of leaders from Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao and now Xi Jinping. And Zhao Leji is a very solid leader, worked a long time in China's poor region, such as Qinghai and also Shanxi. And he certainly will contribute to poverty reduction, as the other guests mentioned. And finally, that Han Zheng, he served as Shanghai leader, is a really financial technocrat. So they really give a good image, their good reputation, and especially the economic team like Han Zheng and Wang Yang, and also in the Power Bureau like Liu He. These people are well respected in international community. I think they will uplift the confidence about Chinese economic reform.
We don't know the portfolios of each and every one of them. Can you share some of your speculations?
Well, I think that this is actually the line is exactly the previous 7 members. I think that Li Shan, certainly Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang will remain as General Secretary and Premier, and Li Zhansu will be the Chairman of the National People's Congress, and Wang Yang will be the Chairman of the CPPCC, and Wang Funing will replace Liu Yunshan as a person is the Executive Secretary of the Secretariat in charge of propaganda and also party building work. And Zhao Leji will replace Wang Jisan, serve as the anti-corruption czar. And finally, Han Zheng most likely will be Executive Vice Premier of the State Council.
So you are saying this is a team of high caliber. What do you think are the major challenges when they take on their offices?
Well, of course, that's also one thing I want to mention, that among these 7 leaders, and Xi Jinping certainly is very familiar with Li Zhansu and Zhao Leji. They really work as a team over the past 5 years. And Li Keqiang and Wang Yang, they actually are the proteges of the Xi Jinping's predecessor, Hu Jintao, and also Han Zheng and Wang Funing, both of them work in Shanghai, very familiar with another predecessor, Jiang Zemin. So actually, this is a really team of rivals. They work together. That shows the solidarity and the unity of the leadership. So the challenge is that they even broader their leadership base, united party together to carry on the next stage of reform. It's really to deal with unbalanced and inadequate reform in various aspects.
And this team of either rivals and friends will inject new momentum. You think reform will be sped up as a result?
Absolutely. Actually, this is really reflect the emphasis on political institutionalization, as the other speakers mentioned. So despite the fact that Xi Jinping certainly got a mandate, and he is well respected in the party leadership and party establishment, but at the same time, he reached out to draw the new blood and the people from different backgrounds, different regions, different experience. I think this is precisely what China needs.
All right. Thank you so much, Cheng Li, for your analysis from D.C. The new Politburo represents the top decision-making body, and now let's have a rundown of their resumes. Who are they and what they are responsible for? Xi Jinping was born in June 1953 He's an ethnic Han from Fuping, Shanxi province. He joined the Communist Party of China in January 1974. He graduated from Tsinghua University with a major in Marxist theory and ideological and political education. He has an in-service postgraduate education and holds a doctorate in law. He is currently the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, President of the People's Republic of China, Chairman of the CPC Central Military Commission, and Chairman of the PRC Central Military Commission. Well, Li Keqiang was born in 1955 and joined the CPC in 1976. He graduated from Peking University with a major in economics. He also holds a doctorate in economics. He is the premier of the State Council and became vice premier in 2008. Li Zhanshu was born in 1950 and joined the CPC in 1975. Li Zhanshu holds an executive master's degree in business administration. He is currently a secretariat of the CPC Central Committee, director of its general office, and secretary of the working committee of the organs directly under the CPC Central Committee. Wang Yang was born in 1955. He graduated from the CPC Central Committee School and received a master's degree from University of Science and Technology of China. He is currently a vice premier of the State Council, served as party chief of CPC committees of Chongqing Municipality and Guangdong Province. Wang Huning was born in 1955. He received a Master of Laws in Fudan University. He also taught there for 8 years and is the director of the Central Policy Research Center of the CPC Central Committee and a member of the Politburo of the 18th CPC Central Committee. Zhao Leji was born in 1957. He joined the CPC in 1975. He graduated from Peking University, majoring in philosophy. He received a master's degree at the CPC Central Committee School, is currently a secretariat of the CPC Central Committee and head of the organization department of the CPC Central Committee. And Han Zheng was born in 1954. He joined the CPC in 1979. He received a master's degree from East China Normal University, is currently the secretary of the CPC Shanghai Municipal Committee. From 2003 to 2012, Han Zheng was the mayor of Shanghai. And the new Politburo represents the top decision-making body in Chinese politics, and its members have just met the press. For more, let's go to Dr. Robert Lawrence Kuhn. So, Dr. Kuhn, what is your impression of the new leadership?
I was witnessing history along with the other reporters and people there. It was just a remarkable experience to see everyone walk out on the stage following General Secretary Xi Jinping, particularly after Xi has had his Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era written into the Constitution and the significance of that. His speech was particularly important because it emphasized this confluence of the two centenary goals that will occur within the term of the 19th Party Congress. The first, the moderately prosperous society in 2020, will be fulfilled within it, and then the planning for the second centenary goal of 2050 or 2049, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, and the policies that will be necessary for that. Looking at the other members of the Standing Committee, you had the feeling of tradition, balance. The norms were continued. Each of the individuals have a very distinguished career. I personally have had the great honor over the years of meeting privately with 5 out of the 7. Actually, the most was General Secretary Xi when he was Party Secretary of Zhejiang Province, and he actually instructed me 12, 13 years ago on how to view China, some of the same things he was saying today. So I can first person corroborate the consistency in General Secretary Xi's way of thinking and understanding. So for me, it was a great honor to be there today to see China emerging into the world, as we said, taking center stage in the world, contributing to the world in many ways. So It's not to say China doesn't have many challenges, but to see the standing members today, led by General Secretary Xi, was inspiring and history-making.
So you met Mr. Xi a decade ago. You have a good understanding of Xi's thoughts, and now we have the term Xi's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era.
Yes.
What is your take on that particular ideology and how it shaped China's policies?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and we saw in the political report, of course, 14 different categories that compose Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. I'd like to maybe start simply, and I start with two basic foundations. One is people orientation, which helps people's lives all across China in every aspect, and the second is the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. So one is individual, one is collective. They obviously are interdependent, but those are the two foundations of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. Then I build on top of that maybe with four different kinds of categories, because I add to it. We have people orientation, rejuvenating the Chinese nation, and then we have to add, I think, two more really important factors. One is comprehensively deepening reform, because reform goes across the entire spectrum of what needs to be accomplished in China. And then fourth is, of course, the party, the increasing role of the party in society, its leadership of society, and Xi's very substantial commitment to renew the party through the anti-corruption campaign, through various behavioral norms and guidelines. It's exceedingly important for the party to be a very robust party to lead the people. So I look at those are the major categories, but you know, there's always more. We could add comprehensively strengthening rule of law. That's very important to General Secretary Xi. I remember literally from 12 and 13 years ago he was talking about that. He was talking about the environment back then. So environment is another critical category, and then international engagement with the world, of which the Belt and Road Initiative is emblematic.
Wow, this is indeed comprehensive. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuhn, for your take on this. And let's go back to the moment just about 30 minutes ago, at the first press meeting of the new Politburo Standing Committee. President and General Secretary Xi Jinping introduces all the members and gives his prospects for the new committee.
女士们、先生们、同志们、朋友们，大家好。昨天，中国共产党第19次全国代表大会已经闭幕。这一次来了许多记者朋友，有些是远道而来。我了解你们对大会做了许多的报道。 很充分的报道，大家辛苦了你们这些报道引起了全世界的广泛的关注，我向你们表示衷心的感谢。
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, good morning. The 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China was concluded yesterday. The Party Congress has received extensive and detailed reporting by our friends from the press, with many of you coming from afar. You have worked very hard, and your media coverage has captured the attention of the world. I want to say a big thank you to you all.
大会开幕以来一共有165个国家。 452个主要政党发来了855份贺电、贺信，其中有814份是国家元首、政府首脑、政党和重要组织机构的领导人发来的。在此，我仅代表中国共产党中央委员会。 向他们表示诚挚的谢意。
Since the opening of the Party Congress, 452 major political parties in 165 countries have sent 855 messages of congratulation. Of these, 814 came from heads of state or government, or the leaders of political parties or important organizations. On behalf of the CPC Central Committee, I wish to convey our sincere appreciation to them all.
在刚才召开的中共19届一中全会上，选举产生了新一届中共中央领导机构。全会选举我继续担任中共中央委员会总书记，这是对我的肯定，更是鞭策和激励。
We have just held the first plenary session of the 19th Central Committee and elected a new central leadership. I was re-elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. I see this as not just approval of my work, but also encouragement that will spur me on.
现在我向大家介绍一下当选的其他6位常委同志。
Now I wish to present to you the other 6 members who have also been elected to the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau.
李克强同志，
Comrade 李克强，
栗战书同志，
Comrade 栗战书，
汪洋同志，
Comrade 汪洋，
王沪宁同志，
Comrade 王沪宁，
赵乐际同志，
Comrade 赵乐际，
韩正同志。
and Comrade 韩正。
其中李克强同志是18届中央政治局常委，其他的5位同志呢都是18届中央的政治局委员。他们呢，这个更多的一些信息资料大家可以通过媒体渠道获取到，我在这里就不再详细的介绍。
Comrade Li Keqiang served on the Political Bureau Standing Committee of the 18th CPC Central Committee, while all the others were members of the Political Bureau of the 18th CPC Central Committee. You can learn more about them from the media.
在这里，我代表新一届中共中央领导成员，衷心感谢全党同志对我们的信任。我们一定恪尽职守，勤勉工作，不辱使命，不负重托。
Here, on behalf of the newly elected central leadership, I wish to express our heartfelt thanks to all other members of the party for the trust they have placed in us. We will work diligently to meet our duty, fulfill our mission, and be worthy of their trust.
过去的5年，我们做了很多的工作，有的已经完成了，有的还要继续做下去。中共19大又提出了新目标、新任务，我们要统筹抓好落实。
Over the past 5 years, we have set out a broad agenda. Some tasks have been completed, while others need more work. This Party Congress has set new goals and new tasks. We must make coordinated efforts to see them through.
经过长期努力，中国特色社会主义进入了新时代。新时代要有新气象，更要有新作为。中共19大到下一次的20大， 这5年正处在实现2个100年奋斗目标的历史交汇期。第一个100年目标要实现，第2个100年奋斗目标要开篇。这其中有一些重要的时间的节点，是我们工作的坐标。
With decades of hard work, socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era. In this new context, we must get a new look and, more importantly, make new accomplishments. The coming 5 years between the 19th and the 20th Party Congress is a period in which the time frames of the 2 centenary goals will converge. Not only must we deliver the first centenary goal, we must also embark on the journey towards the second centenary goal. As I look ahead to the next 5 years, I see several important junctures and signposts.
2018年，我们将迎来改革开放40周年。改革开放是决定当代中国命运的关键一招。40年的改革开放使中国人民生活实现了小康，逐步富裕起来了。我们将总结经验，乘势而上，继续推进国家治理体系和治理能力现代化，坚定不移深化各方面的改革，坚定不移地扩大开放，使改革和开放相互促进，相得益彰。我坚信，中华民族伟大复兴必将在改革开放的进程中得以实现。
In 2018, we will mark the 40th anniversary of the launch of Reform and Opening Up. Reform and opening up is a crucial move that is shaping China's future. 40 years of reform and opening up has made it possible for our people to lead decent and even comfortable lives. We will review our experience and build on the good momentum to continue modernizing China's system and capacity for governance, and make determined efforts to comprehensively deepen reform and open China still wider to the world. We will see that reform and opening up complement and reinforce each other. It is my conviction that the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation will become a reality in the course of reform and opening up.
2019年，我们将迎来中华人民共和国成立70周年。我们将贯彻新发展理念，推动中国经济持续健康发展，惠及中国人民和各国人民。我们将继续落实好“十三五”规划确定的各项任务，并对未来发展做出新的规划，推动各项事业全面发展，把我们的人民共和国建设得更加繁荣富强。
In 2019, we will mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. We will act on the new vision for development and strive for sustained and healthy economic growth that benefits people in China and around the world. We will continue our efforts to accomplish all the tasks laid down in the 13th Five-Year Plan, develop new blueprints for China's future, and see the flourishing of all our endeavors. These efforts will contribute towards a more prosperous and strong People's Republic.
2020年，我们将全面建成小康社会。全面建成小康社会，一个也不能少。共同富裕路上，一个也不能掉队。 我们将举全党全国之力，坚决完成脱贫攻坚任务，确保兑现我们的承诺。我们要牢记，人民对美好生活的向往，就是我们的奋斗目标。坚持以人民为中心的发展思想，努力抓好保障和改善民生各项工作，不断增强人民的获得感、幸福感、安全感，不断推进全体人民共同富裕。我坚信，中国人民的生活一定会一年更比一年好。
In 2020, we will establish a moderately prosperous society across all metrics. This is a society to be enjoyed by each and every one of us. On the march towards common prosperity, no one must be left behind. We will mobilize the whole party and the whole country in a resolute push to deliver on our pledge and eradicate poverty in China. The aspirations of the people to live a better life must always be the focus of our efforts. We must remain committed to a people-centered philosophy of development, strive to ensure and improve living standards, and make steady progress towards enhancing our people's sense of fulfillment, happiness, and security, and towards realizing common prosperity for everyone. I have no doubt in my mind that our people's lives will see further improvement year after year.
2021年，我们将迎来中国共产党成立100周年。中国共产党立志于中华民族千秋伟业，百年恰是风华正茂。中国共产党是世界上最大的政党，大就要有大的样子。实践充分证明，中国共产党能够带领人民进行伟大的社会革命，也能够进行伟大的自我革命。我们要永葆蓬勃朝气，永远做人民公仆、时代先锋、民族脊梁。全面从严治党永远在路上，不能有任何喘口气、歇歇脚的念头。我们将继续清除一切侵蚀党的健康机体的病毒，大力营造风清气正的政治生态，以全党的强大正能量，在全社会凝聚起推动中国发展进步的磅礴力量。
In 2021, we will mark the centenary of the Communist Party of China. For the party which fights for the eternal well-being of the Chinese nation, the centenary only ushers in the prime of life. As the world's largest political party, the CPC must behave in a way commensurate with this status. Its history makes it abundantly clear that the CPC is capable of not only spearheading a great social revolution, but also imposing a great reform on itself. We, as its members, must always have a youthful spirit and forever be the servants of the people, the vanguard of the times, and the backbone of our nation. Exercising full and rigorous governance over the party is a journey to which there is no end. We should never entertain the idea of taking a breather or halting our steps. Instead, we must continue to rid ourselves of any virus that erodes the party's fabric, make great efforts to foster a healthy political environment of integrity and generate waves of positive energy throughout our party, which can then build into a mighty nationwide force, driving China's development and progress.
中国共产党和中国人民从苦难中走过来，深知和平的珍贵，发展的价值。中国人民自信、自尊，将坚定维护国家主权、安全、发展利益，同时将同各国人民一道，积极推动构建人类命运共同体，不断为人类和平与发展的崇高事业做出新的、更大的贡献。
The Communist Party of China and the Chinese people have gone through trials and tribulations. These experiences have taught us that peace is precious and development must be valued. With confidence and pride, the Chinese people will be steadfast in upholding our country's sovereignty, security, and development interests. We will also work with other nations to build a global community with a shared future and make new and greater contributions to the noble cause of peace and development for all humanity.
历史是人民书写的，一切成就归功于人民。只要我们深深扎根人民，紧紧依靠人民，就可以获得无穷的力量，风雨无阻，奋勇向前。
The people are the creators of history. It is to them that we owe all our achievements. As long as we firmly align ourselves with the people and rely on them, we can and will have boundless energy to forge ahead, come rain or shine.
俗语说啊，百闻不如一见呐。我们欢迎各位记者朋友在中国多走走，多看看，继续关注中共19大之后中国的发展变化，更加全面地了解和报道中国。
As the saying goes, it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. We encourage members of the press to visit and see more of China. We hope that after the Party Congress, you will continue to follow China's development and progress, and learn about and report on more dimensions of China.
我们不需要更多的溢美之词，我们一贯欢迎客观的介绍和有益的建议。正所谓，不要人夸颜色好，只留清气满乾坤。谢谢大家。
We do not need lavish praise from others. However, we do welcome objective reporting and constructive suggestions. For this is our motto. Not angling for compliments, I'd be content that my integrity fills the universe. Thank you.
And that's a rerun of the Meet the Press session of the new CPC leadership. And in his remark, General Secretary Xi Jinping outlines the plans for his new leadership team. China will continue reform and opening up and deliver on the 2 centennial targets. Let's come back to our studio discussions. Martin, many people in the West say that China has good planning, meticulous planning and methodical execution of its plans. What do you make of his ambition of delivering on the targets, 2 centennial goals? that is by 2021 to build China into a moderate, prosperous society and a great power by 2049?
Well, of course, we're 2020, 2021 is very close now.
Yeah.
So we're talking about less than a 5-year plan in relationship to that. And I think the truth is that China's well on its way to achieving those targets of a moderately prosperous society. I mean, what I think is fascinating is the target for 2050, which is still 30 years away. And I think it's this this combination, I think, in China, Chinese governance, of firstly pragmatism, secondly 5-year plans, and thirdly much longer term strategic goals. I mean, this is most unusual combination.
This is very unique in the world.
Yes, completely unique to talk in these terms. And not just to talk in these terms, to deliver in these terms. Anyone can talk, but it's the delivery, it's the achievement.
And looking from the track record, it seems that the Chinese leadership always deliver on those targets if those plans were well made.
Absolutely. I mean, they've got a really extraordinary record of achievement. I mean, it goes back, of course, to 1949 and the revolution and what was achieved in that period, but especially when the reform period started in 1978. I mean, truly remarkable. I mean, let's remind ourselves, in 1978, the Chinese economy was 5% of the size of the American economy. Living standards in China were 2% of those of the United States. And now we're looking at a situation where the Chinese economy is almost the same size as the American economy, depends how you measure it.
Yeah.
And living standards have been transformed across the whole of China, but obviously there's still great variations.
But down the road, to deliver on those targets, what might be the pits and traps that can keep China from developing as it wishes?
Yeah, I mean, of course, challenge traps. First of all, we live in a global economy. We need to understand, as the largest trading nation, a lot of things are beyond our control, right? So, for example, international trade. So, for example, backlash against globalization, and for example,
which is strong.
Yeah, which, for example, geopolitics. So those things are out of our control. And secondly, sometimes and not everything can be planned, right? So for example, right now we need to focus on adjusting economic structure. And as President Xi said, there's this contradiction between what we need and unbalanced development, which means part of the economy has to be structured. Certain sectors, they need to be shrunk, which suggesting, I mean, the development of certain sectors actually went too far. So otherwise you don't need to.
But they get the problems. They have outlined those problems.
They outline the problem, but executing by no means is easy. So that's a potential challenge. And of course, there's also a challenge between delivering economic growth and, for example, emphasize on environment and reform. I think when you look at all those things, we need to be mindful of potential challenges.
But you believe the system is serving the reform well? The system can provide the impetus?
I think so far the system has more flexibility than a lot of people have anticipated, which is good.
And what do you think, well, Martin, systematically, what kind of adjustments need to happen to deliver?
I think that adjustments will probably become more and more necessary, actually. More and more flexibility we required, because China's moving from a situation where it had a very underdeveloped economy to a situation where that economy and the society is much more mature and much more complicated,
diverse and pluralistic,
diverse and much more many more competing demands. Actually, some people will want this, some people will think the environment needs to be sorted out, and so on. So there's all those kind of considerations,
and that's why they have a strong leadership of the CPC.
Yeah, this is where leadership becomes more complex. And what's interesting about the new leadership, as Chung Li I think was saying earlier, was that it's got a very diverse range of experienced talent, and that I think it's very different from a Western system. In a Western system, probably hardly anyone will have any experience of running anything. But in China, you have these leaders who've got, each of them has got a tremendous body of experience in all sorts of respects.
So you believe they are in steady hands running China?
Yeah, I think things look very promising for China. I mean, of course, always expect the unexpected. I mean, just to emphasize the problem on globalization, I mean, what's going to happen to US-China relations with Trump as president? Where is that going to go? Now that is, still, what is it? Nearly a year after his election,
Still
unknown quantity.
Unknown quantities.
And things could go, let's face it, bottom up.
So we have a steady hand here, and hopefully they can take up the challenges and overcome those uncertainties. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, Sital, for your analysis and insights on this. You've been watching a special coverage on CGTN on the new leadership of the CPC. I'm Joe in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.